Come on. Come on. There we go. Sorry, folks, having some technical difficulties for no reason. Didn't do anything differently, just decided to be weird. So hopefully you can see this. All right, let's see here. Feisty Crabman coming in first. How you doing? Pleasantly cool, Texas. Good to hear. Patrick C. Davis asks, will there be any means to use Sherman tanks of other scales than 28mm for the game? We've had people asking about using 15mm or whatever Flames of War is, whatever that scale is, 15 or 20mm. We would probably need to test it. Strangely, I do have a whole bunch of Sherman Flames of War tanks, so I could probably test it and come up with some, maybe we'll make a blog post about it or something. Excellent day in Orange County, California. Have you got any games of Steel Rift? I haven't yet, other than the original demo and stuff like that I did at Nova, but I haven't since, recently, because I've got to be able to build two forces. I've got nobody else to play against. So the first force, which I've posted on Instagram and stuff like that, that's up now. That's done. And now that the zine is out, actually probably tonight, I'll probably start building. Tonight or tomorrow, I'll start building the second force and then go from there. So looking forward to it, though. Wintertime sucks. From a too early dark Berlin, Germany. Yeah, I get you. DJ Todd P. Harris, how you doing? Chilly, Columbus, Ohio. Starting my winter Zombicide project, creating 3D game tiles. Nice. Sunny, Virginia. Cold Cork in Ireland. Coffee and brushes out. Nice. Eudora, Kansas. VJ Morph, how you doing? Morning from Quebec. Picked up the zine yesterday. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Good afternoon from Kent, England. Greetings from the id of the U.S. Gotcha. Good morning from lovely Washington, D.C. How you doing, Fungazi? Chilly, Central Pennsylvania. Coastal North Carolina. Good morning from Cleveland, Ohio. Finishing up some World Eaters. Nice. Mexico City. Can Steel Rift mechs reasonably fit within a Battletech game in terms of general scale and design style? I would... design style, maybe not. I've seen plenty of people using Battletech miniatures to play Steel Rift, because Steel Rift is very miniature agnostic. I think that Battletech players using Steel Rift figures, other players would be like, I don't know what that's supposed to be. You know what I mean? Because especially if you've been playing Battletech for a while, you know what the other silhouettes are. You know what the other models are. So I don't know if that's, you certainly could if you want, if your friends are cool with it or whatever that you're playing with, but that'd be the only issue I could see. But otherwise, the size and scale, they're basically the same. The bases are different. Steel Rift bases are round and they're around 40mm, whereas generally Battletech bases are hexagonal and slightly smaller. So Northeast Georgia, Farmington Hills, Michigan, slightly gray and damp London, painting 6mm scenery for my next game at Velstrike. Much quicker than painting 28mm scenery, that's for sure. Yeah, I can understand that for sure. Yeah, it's gray and windy here today. Beautiful but chilly Junction City, Wisconsin. Getting ready to prime some of my Joy Toy Marines. No kidding. Wow. Everything moved. Goodness gracious. There we go. Tennessee, Arizona, Warwick, Rhode Island, the damp West Midlands. Morning from Denver. Finally getting around to some Escher that I've had assembled, waiting for paint for way too long. Nice. A little bit of Necromunda. Cool. Chester, Virginia, Newfoundland. Greetings from a damp and gray West Sussex. Looking forward to hearing some zine thoughts. Absolutely. I got the zine right here, as a matter of fact. I've printed my own copy. Thank you very much. Because I'm fancy, but you don't have to print it if you don't want to. You could take it someplace to get it printed, like a place that does like a copy center if you wanted to, or you could just have it on your laptop or your tablet or your phone or whatever. Missouri, Columbia, Maryland, rise and shine, you fabulous human being. Well, that's very nice of you to say, unless you're talking to somebody else, and that's very nice of you to say to them. World's ready for your amazingness. Good morning. Well, there you go. This should be on Twitch as well. I'm still not sure about multi-streaming yet. Good morning from sunny Markham. How you doing? Space Marine Terminators. Good morning from Eastern Kentucky. Nope, not Kentucky. That's Connecticut. No reason is the best reason for technical difficulties. Yeah, I just I hit start or whatever, and it just didn't. And then I was like, I had to close it. I had to, and I couldn't close the program. I had to end the task, Control Alt Delete and all that jazz, and then start it over, and then it seemed to work fine. I don't know. It's a little wackadoo. Hello from cloudy Bavaria, working on a project to finish my pile of shame by the end of the year. Nice. Sunny Milwaukee, looking to do last yard cleaning today. Nice. How you doing, Jesse? Let's see here. Congrats on the zine. Missed that format for music and games. Yeah, I think that, I mean, you're seeing a decent amount of zines in the role-playing game space, actually. There's a relatively well-liked, like a very popular kind of, within the indie scene, a very popular role-playing game called Mothership, which was like a sci-fi one. And I picked up one of the early copies of that at Gen Con, and that was basically a zine. Like, it wasn't print yourself. They had printed it and they were doing that, but it was still basically this format, 5.5 by 8.5, and stapled and all that stuff. Might have had a cardstock cover, but it was still all black and white. Checking in from Tennessee, trying to get enthused about digging a hole for a pig roast on Thanksgiving. Wow. Completely missed the announcement video. I'll have to watch it after this one. Absolutely. I've got an announcement video. Vince has got an announcement video on the website. If you go to snarlingbadger.com/snarl, there is a battle report as well that Vince did. Current painting project is an entire expanded set of a Hero's Quest. Nice. Hello from Wolfsburg, Germany. Working on my Secret Santa mini. I fear that I bite too much off for the remaining days. That's always a tough one, yeah. Lexington, Kentucky, Toronto, Ontario, northern Sweden. How's the day going? So far, so good. Still early. Norfolk, Virginia. Got to visit Cork this last summer. Nice. Chilly, Boston. Sit upright and hold a brush. Enjoying getting back to Zen. That's good. It's good to hear. Tank is the bomb. It's a fun tank. Yeah, I do like the Shermans. That's part of the reason why I was like, hey, this I think is a cool idea. I was actually looking at my, I have this text file on my phone that has different ideas for game ideas and stuff like that. And I was going back and looking at it, and yeah, the idea that I had for this game was like pretty much all in there, and it was kind of interesting. And then also the Majestic 13, like, it's almost exactly kind of what we did in there too, which is interesting. I'd kind of forgotten about that, like what I had written for that. But yeah, it was cool. I'd show up with drop zone models for Steel Rift. Nice. Saskatchewan, always fun to say. Las Vegas, first time catching live. Nice. I'll be in Las Vegas in end of January. I'll be there for Las Vegas Open. Couple hours of Uncle Adam, and then over to Horsham Wargamers event. Nice. Let's see. Day 2 of seeing Metallica in Detroit. Wow. Setting up my first PLA 3D printer. Cool. Wonder if there is a zine app that works like podcast apps, then you could just subscribe to episodes as they arrived. I have this idea for a zine app. I've had it for a while, but it wouldn't be like a place to go find zines and then go and like order them and then get a printed thing. It would be like a digital zine publishing tool that anybody could use and stuff like that. But it would be, it's a weird concept, and it probably wouldn't make any money, and that's why you aren't going to see it. But I feel like there's something there. Baden, Pennsylvania, how you doing? Tuning in from Reno. Excited to hear zine details while I use an ink and airbrush for the first time on some minis. Nice. Ink and airbrush is always cool. Post-apocalyptic American Midwest in a Sherman tank. Cool. Made me think of the box art for 3 Floyd's Barbarian Haze IPA. Pretty epic. You can find an image. Morning from Austin, Texas. How you doing? Yeah. But the idea was that, again, like, my initial idea was like, what if the nuclear test in July of 45, the first one, they mentioned it in Oppenheimer, obviously, that's kind of the point of the movie. What if that did actually set the atmosphere on fire like they thought there was a very slim chance that it might? And then that kind of starts the apocalypse. Because so frequently, like, apocalypses happen either in the future or maybe they happen in the present. If you think about things like Mad Max and the Road Warrior and stuff like that, that happened like roughly around the time. Like, it seemed like the apocalypse happened in the 70s or 80s, you know, that kind of thing. Because that's when those movies were originally made. But the idea that there's an apocalypse that happened in the 40s, you know, kind of towards the end days of World War II, I thought that was interesting. And then the whole idea of the tanks and all that kind of stuff. And then Vince was like, oh, well, actually, I grew up where the majority of the tanks for, you know, the Sherman tanks were made in World War II. And then so we kind of did a little bit of research about that and all that kind of stuff. It was a whole thing. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Plus, Sherman tanks, I have always thought they were the cooler looking tanks, in my opinion. It's what I think of when I think of a tank in my head. And also, they're a relatively simple model to be able to get a hold of. There's tons of companies that make, you know, we may put a blog post up on the news section of the site, of the snarlingbadger.com site, to let people know different places they could go get a tank if they wanted to, or a couple. I have painted 2 at this point. Vince has painted 2. I'm going to build and paint 1 more, so that when I go to Vince's place in early December, I'm going to bring my 3 along. He's already got 2, and then hopefully the 5 of us, being me, Vince, Sam Lenz, Ninjon, and Miniac, we should hopefully be able to play a game of tanks for the apocalypse, and that'll be fun. And maybe we'll film something. Who is to say? Nice one on the zine. I'll be picking it up for sure. Tank game sounds fun, and I think I called the new Rain in Hell faction. Maybe. That could be. But I'm glad to hear that you're interested. Dayton, Ohio, how you doing? Portugal, howdy. Working on Deadpool's taco truck for Marvel Crisis Protocol on a rainy South Georgia. Huh. I don't think I've seen that model. Good morning from beautiful Chama, new on vacation, and hoping my bolt action Sherman 4 gets in today when I get home so I can get a built painted before Thursday so we can try tanks. Nice. Mothership is awesome. I'm not an RPG person, but I do have a tendency to buy an RPG here and there just because I'm like, this is very cool and I want to read it. And that was one of those that looked like it was cool. Warning all the tanks for Snarl. Is it mostly 1/35th scale? It's 28 millimeter scale. So I believe that's closer to 1/56th, technically. If you look at, like, I don't think Airfix is the right size. But the tanks that you use in, like I said, in like bolt action and stuff like that, those are the right size. That 28 millimeter scale. Also, why Sherman only? Why not T-34s? Well, because if the apocalypse happens, how would the Russian T-34 get over to America to have a battle, or vice versa? You know what I mean? So this is all happening now. Like, you know, now that the world is basically over and there's not that many survivors, you know, you would go to a factory and then, you know, like I said, liberate a vehicle, but you don't have really, you know, shells for it, really, because the shells weren't made at the factory. That was just the tanks were made there. So, you know, the shells that you are using to shoot at each other are kind of like homebrew, like you made them yourself kind of things, and they're kind of sketchy, and they don't necessarily always work. Like, they're not like driving around with a tank full of shells that are all, you know, brand new and fancy, because that's, you know, this game is basically the people that are, you know, in the story of the game are the people who live around Lima, which I thought it was Lima, but it's Lima evidently, although I keep screwing that up. Anyway, they're around the Lima Locomotive Works there in Ohio, and so yeah, I'm certain a game is going on like this, or actions are going on like this, potentially in Russia, potentially any place that they build like tanks. There might be places like in Wisconsin where they're building John Deere, so it's people driving around tractors and shooting at each other. I suppose that's a different game altogether. That one doesn't. I can't come up with a good like a play on words for that one. But if somebody else wants to, they should totally make a zine and do that. How many of us printed up Snarl at work in the finest tradition of zines? I mean, sure, I get that. Savannah, Georgia, painting under some veil touched from Ravaged Star. Nice. Tidying up the hobby room in Alabama today. Nice. Pretty annoyed as both my gigs I was going to for my birthday at the end of the month have been postponed. Well, that's a bummer. Gaddis Gaming says, we have tanks. You do. We put a link in our blog post to a bunch of different places, including Gaddis Games. Because we're just looking basically for M4 Shermans, but yeah, you guys have got it. Warlord, Rubicon. I can't think of all. Trenchworks, maybe. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but absolutely. Hi from Hudson, Wisconsin. Good cloudy Sunday from Quebec. Working on a sea serpent for my D&D group's seafaring adventure. Nice. Greetings from Kyiv, Ukraine. How you doing? 5-on-5 tank battles. We didn't really play it in teams, but I suppose you easily could. There's no reason you couldn't. But it does go up to 10 players. So it's 2 to 10, which is, Tommy, who was doing some of the play testing, he actually got one of his sons had a birthday party, like a sleepover. I don't know how old the kid is, maybe 10, 11, something like that. And so he taught these kids how to play the game. And, kids these days with the video games and the hula hoops or whatever, I don't know what the kids are into. But they had a good time. So much so that like the next morning when they got up, they're like, hey, can we play that tank thing again? So, they weren't just being nice and going, okay, old man, we'll do your weird thing with the dice and the plastic tanks. When really what they want to be doing is, I don't know, Minecraft. The children yearn for the mines. But yeah, they wanted to do it again. They wanted to do it again, and it was fun. So that's cool. We should get like a stamp and say kid approved on there. I don't know. Maybe not. That's maybe not necessarily what we're trying to do. Hi from Denmark. Have you tried Mantic Dead Zone? I was thinking about buying it. Love to hear your opinion on it. I bought Mantic Dead Zone first edition, built models, built terrain, never played it. We were going to play it at Adepticon one time, and I set everything up, and I had the models. I brought everything with me, and we were going to play it at Adepticon, but by that point, we had some things to drink. And so the rules, we weren't able to really handle the rules at that point, so we did not do that. I bought the book and the dice, the special dice you needed for version 2. Never played that either. Now I have the book for version 3, which I guess doesn't need fancy dice, or maybe it does. I don't remember. I still haven't played it. Nobody that I know in this area plays it. So, it's not been enough of a game to push me into becoming an advocate for it. Like, the models are kind of cool. The terrain, I like the terrain a lot. The modular kind of weird plastic terrain. I like that stuff quite a bit. And there's some concepts in there that are interesting to me, but it's not just lit me on fire. So I've never pursued it greatly. I would still like to play a demo of it somewhere, but it never seems to happen. Space Station Zero content too sounds fun to me. Yep, there's Tanks for the Apocalypse, which is the main game that's in there, and then there's the other one. There's called Rain in Hell: The Reckoning. That's what it's called. I could show you right here. Yeah, Rain in Hell: The Reckoning, and that adds a new faction right there. And then at the end there is, and also two new, it's not only a new faction, but also two new scenarios as well. And then there's this one, which is Space Station Zero New Discoveries, which adds new types of equipment, weapons, technology, medical stuff, things like that you can add into your Space Station Zero games. Plenty of companies make appropriate vehicles, not enough make appropriate buildings for the setting. Oh, and 15 millimeter? I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of buildings from the folks who make Flames of War. There's a lot of buildings for that, although sometimes they don't have them in stock. That's for sure. Fingers crossed at the TMX this year. I'm going to bring some tanks and Blitz Bowl. Nice. Yeah, I'm thinking about trying to have like some sort of Tanks for the Apocalypse event at, I think that'd be a lot of fun to do at TMX this year. Hello from Nova. How you doing? Tank Girl's vehicle was more reminiscent of a Stuart light tank, obviously upgunned. Yeah, I have some Stuarts too in Flames of War format. Like that was when I played Flames of War, I played US and I just had Shermans and Stuarts and then as little infantry as I could, which you had to have some, but I liked tanks better. I didn't want to have a ton of infantry. So yeah, I haven't watched Tank Girl in forever. JP Got Rockets, how you doing? For those of us prone to a level of nerdism about things like that, is there a particular model of Sherman that's particularly? Not really. I mean, the pictures that I've got from the tank works that I used it in the video, if you'll notice in that, I think those are M4A ones, which are the ones where they still had the cast hull that's very kind of rounded and smooth. Whereas you'll notice this, I'm pretty sure is an M4A3 technically because it has the triangular welded hull. But any kind of Sherman should be, I mean, technically you can use anything you want, obviously. But if you're trying to make them Shermans, whatever Sherman is fine. But whichever one you like, I guess. Let's see here. Hello from Mar del Plata, currently painting dinosaur minis. Nice. Using the premise of tanks, but near whatever tank plant in other countries, figured it could be Germany, China, Russia, be able to use other tank nationalities. Sure. Like, again, they wouldn't go up against other nationalities. You wouldn't have probably, Panzers fighting, Shermans or whatever, but if you just wanted to have Panzers fighting Panzers and stuff happening, that's fine too. Now, the question is it just, I've just used different models because it's fun to use different models, or are you changing stats and things like that? We've had some people in the Discord asking about like, well, what if there was a different tanks and we wanted to tweak the stats and things like that? We didn't really get into that because, again, this is a $8 zine. So this, there were plenty of times during the development of this where I was like, oh, we should add this maybe, or like, and then, or what about this, or what, like we were going to turn into, like, we wanted to have, I kicked around the idea of like making the turret like a thing that you had to move or something like that, or so, like to have the turret's positionality make sense within the game and have, and Vince was generally the one to be like, remember, we need to be able to put this in as few pages as possible so it's printable. I mean, as it is, it's 28 pages. So it's still like, if you compare this to say something like Space Weirdos, the entire thing is 16 pages. So this is 28, which is a good deal thicker. Now, part of that is because we also use a slightly larger font than they do. So that kind of adds up over time. And the reason we do that is because none of us is actually getting any younger, unless you're Benjamin Button. But evidently nobody else is getting any younger. So I just figured if the font is too small, it becomes difficult to read. So that's why the font's just a little bit bigger here than, say, something like Space Weirdos. And I think even Sword Weirdos, which is the fantasy version of that game, which is, again, the reason I'm mentioning those two games is because they're also in this format, this 5.5 by 8.5, which is basically it's an 8.5 by 11 folded in half, and all that kind of stuff. But that kind of game, too, I think is 24 pages, right? So that's a little bit closer to what our game is, although maybe I think our game ends on page 20. Yeah, page 20. So, and then if you take the cover into consideration, all that kind of stuff, and, the couple of pages in the front, like, table of contents and the credits, and then the little letter and all that kind of stuff. So it's short, but we could have made it longer, but we were constantly kind of fighting against the idea of making it too long because then, we didn't want to make this a 32-page booklet. If you don't staple it, I've noticed this, you kind of get the middle sections just because of the thickness here, and, they kind of stick out just a little bit. It's called creep in the industry. So the cover, I don't know, you can't really see it here, but like the middle sections, when they stick out a little bit further here, in normal books and comic books and things like that, they print bigger than they need and then they trim it off and then you don't have any creep. But since we're not doing that here, obviously, because you're printing, unless you want to, you could certainly trim it off if you wanted to. But the more pages you add, the more of that creep from the middle section that comes in. So you have to be kind of cognizant of that. So Let's see here. How to explain T-34s? Oh, everything moved. In the default setting, it's altered to history. Maybe the war went differently. I mean, sure, if you wanted to, sure. How about Jeeps from the Ford plant in Detroit? Fast movers with twin 50Ks or bazookas. I mean, that might be some sort of add-on at some point, I suppose. Painting 4,000 points of alien hives and battle sisters at 50 millimeters or 50% scale, 14 millimeter, I guess, for Grimdark Future. Nice. Excited about your tank game? It sounds fun. It is. It's a good time. Go to Bowling Green then. Weaponized Corvettes. There you go. I could get on board with Tractor Fight. I mean, that'd be something all completely different. You keep costing me money. I apologize. I try to make it as little as possible. So glad to see you and Vince Company doing well. Also glad to see you supporting your older releases. Yeah. Well, I mean, so here's the deal. The older releases don't need support. Like, the idea of supporting a game these days, in my mind, it's a GW kind of, it's a thing that they've conjured into being, right? The idea that, like, well, if you're not constantly making more and more add-ons for a game that you have to keep buying, well, that game is dead. It's unsupported. It's like saying that, like, Catch-22 isn't supported as a book. You know what I mean? Or not Catch-22. Catcher in the Rye. I don't know. Think of any book that's like a classic book that doesn't have a sequel. Well, that doesn't mean the book is dead. The book is still, you know, it's still available, all that kind of stuff. All of our stuff is always available because it's print on demand or downloadable. And so, like, if it was a thing where we, like, got, let's say, I don't know, 5,000 copies of Reign in Hell printed somewhere, and then we sold them all, and then we didn't get any more because we didn't know if we wanted to order another 5,000 or if we order less, is that a problem? If we order, you know, whatever, then that's at that point kind of an unsupported game because you can't get it anymore. But you can still buy Reign in Hell. You'll be able to buy it for until the day we tell them to stop making it because it's print on demand. So the concept of, like, well, a game's not supported if it doesn't keep getting more stuff. We're not trying to make, none of our games that we're trying to make into a hobby. They are things that you play in the hobby, you know. Games Workshop specifically is about trying to make it so that Warhammer is all you play. So that's why they produce 50 books a minute, you know, and do all that stuff constantly. And you're constantly like, oh, more models, more of this, more of that. They want that to be your ecosystem. And we're just like, no, you buy our game and play it for a while, and then you have a good time with it. Maybe you put it away and then play it again in a couple of years if you want to, like do another campaign, different models, whatever. Pull it out, play it whenever you want to. It's not like the game that you play, you know. That being said, you know, in this situation, it made sense to us to make an add-on. With Reign in Hell, we did make an add-on. We made an expansion, but only because we did not launch it originally with solo and co-op. And a lot of people were like, hey, solo and co-op. Now, the reason there's no solo and co-op in this is because, again, page limit. So we weren't trying to, like, if we wanted to make solo and co-op in this, we would have had to have add at least another probably, well, the thing is you can only add pages in 4-page chunks in a thing like this. Every piece of paper has got 4 pages on it, one page, and then the insides to each of those. So those are known as signatures in the printing industry. So in this sort of situation, whatever the pages and number of the book, it has to be in multiples of 4. So, you know, Space Weirdos is 16 pages, 24 pages for Sword Weirdos. Ours is 28, but we were concerned maybe we're going to go to 32, you know, that kind of thing. So the reason there's no solo or co-op play in this game is because it's a real small, little fun kind of game, and you should be playing it with friends. And it would have taken a lot more work to write some sort of AI so that you could play, you know what I mean? So so that the tanks would have, like, know what to do and stuff like that. Majestic 13 has AI for the aliens. Space Station Zero has AI for the mutants and the robots and all that kind of stuff, you know, that kind of thing. So John Deere game could be called Apocalypse Plow. That's not bad. That's not bad, honestly. That's pretty good. What size board is Tanks the Apocalypse designed for? 3 foot by 3 foot. At the 28 millimeter scale. If somebody starts playing with 15 millimeter models like Flames of War, we would have to figure out, like, there's a part of me that goes, oh, you just make it half, but then that'd be what, like 18 inches by 18 inches. That seems like a really small board, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's a 24 by 24 in that situation. I don't know. What size board is... Oh, I just read that. Greensford from Virginia. How you doing? I want an Apocalypse tractor game. I mean, you could. Any particular model of Sherman? M4, A3, or Easy 8? Like I said, any kind of Sherman you want, honestly. Just got home from night shift. Hope everyone's well. How you doing, Colin? Coming in hot from Orlando. Nice. I don't like liberate. I prefer strategically transfer equipment to alternate locations, or steal for short. Nice. There you go. Couldn't find a Sherman nearby, so I got a Russian tank. Backstory is that it's captured tank in the factory he's going to be studying. Sure, why not? It's a good idea. John Deere plant would probably be making material during World War II. That's a very good possibility, honestly. I'd have to probably do some research on that. Hi from a wet Telford, UK. Just back in the hotel from the IPMS show and winding down with a glass of red wine. Neat. I don't know what the IPMS show, but it sounds cool. Turns out Bolt Action do Oddballs Sherman from Kelly's Heroes. Yes, they do. Somebody mentioned that, and I'd forgotten about that. I knew that they did, but someone mentioned that in the stream yesterday over on Twitter or Twitch, whatever the heck I was streaming on. Sherman's not the only armored vehicle being produced at the time. Congratulations, everyone is now going to look into local war production, historical gaming trope, doing research. Sure, yeah. Let's see here. I believe John Deere actually made plane parts and Jeeps. Oh, that makes sense. International Harvester, sure. Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving. Oh, there you go. See, I think there's a local-ish within the state. Down in the southern part of the state, there's a group called the Southeastern Wisconsin Battle Badgers, and they do a lot of Flames of War and other stuff like that. But Flames of War is kind of their big thing, and they usually have an event for charity, I think, that happens right around Thanksgiving that they call Thanksgiving, and it's a big, huge battle thing. Yeah, I think that's the case. The new game will have some content in the next snarl. It will promote awareness of breast cancer and be called Tanks for the Mammaries. I don't know that that's the case at all, but you know. Is there a Tank Girl RPG? Geez, you'd think. But not that I know of. Let's see here. Back to work for me. Well, I have a good work. Being in the north of England, I'm only 2 miles from Vickers, who made stacks of tanks and things. Sure. Smaller production games, aggregate all tank guns as tank gun. It will be sufficient. Probably, yeah. Checking in from Sylvania, Ohio, running Blender renders for Bronze Age Caveman. Listening to Tabletop minions in the background. Nice. Sherman Talk makes me want to watch Fury again. Yeah, I have that on Blu-ray. I should watch that again. I haven't watched it in a while. I keep forgetting that one of the tractor companies made Jeeps. Just can't remember which one. Hi from Oconomowoc. That's how you say that, by the way. I'm from Wisconsin, so I can say Oconomowoc. Hi from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. I've always wanted to write my own game, not for selling, just for personal achievement. Any thoughts about how to decide on a system for the game? I mean, if you're writing it just for yourself, sometimes the good idea is honestly to start from like a game that you kind of like, but there's things that you don't like, and then trying to fix those. It's not a bad place to start. Like deciding to sit down and write a brand new game from scratch is kind of hard. It like kind of, you want to like a bit of a stepping stone there. So taking a game and being like, I want to start with this game, but I want to fix it. That's honestly what a lot of, again, I'm going back to Space Weirdos, but that game is referred to as like it's Space Weirdos : a skirmish heartbreaker. What a heartbreaker is, and I did not know this until that game came out and I did some research to figure it out. A heartbreaker is when you redesign a game because you're like, this game is good, but it could be fixed. And that's what's known as generally a heartbreaker. So people generally in the RPG space do that a lot, where they're like, hey, you know what? I really like second edition D&D, except for this, and this. So you kind of make a game that's like it, very much, but has the things fixed that you think need to be fixed. And so when Casey wrote Space Weirdos, it was like, I want to take a bunch of different types of skirmish games that I like and take all the good bits and slap them all together. And that's why he calls it a skirmish heartbreaker. So yeah, that's probably a better place to start, honestly. I feel the pinch of cutting out details and rules to fit a page count. It's the balance of being simple enough to get people to try a new rule set, but complex enough to be interesting. Yeah. Dead Zone is good fun, and the modular terrain is excellent for all types of games. Yeah, I use the modular terrain stuff on all kinds of stuff. Use the standard D8s, and if you can't get the special D6s, you can match the symbols to standard D6 faces. Nice. Snarl rocks. I appreciate that. Thank you. Patty's Parlor says, I love Dead Zone. Creep is a good name for a zine, too. It probably is, yeah. Customizing a tank model like you do in Gaslands is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, the next one that I'm doing. So of the two that you see kind of in the videos and the pictures and stuff like that, one is very standard. One is very just like they took it, it was ready to go, it's got markings on it, blah blah blah, and it's just dirty. You know what I mean? And they've up armored it here and there and put some stowage on it, but people were doing that in World War II anyway. That's fine. The other one that's in the picture here, like these guys have done a little, like they've kind of found some red paint and put it on there. It's not camouflage. Like if you think about it, they're driving around, in the wasteland, and they want to maybe scare people. So that's why they've got some human skulls on there and stuff like that, and a little bit of whatever. But the next one that I'm going to do, I really want to go kind of crazy with. I really want to really decorate it up and do that. So that's the plan for the next one, which I'll have to get done before early December. So I'll make sure to do that too. Honestly, that Warlord kit goes together really fast. Like all tank kits go generally together pretty quickly like that, Dead Zone is excellent sci-fi skirmish, better than Kill Team in my opinion. Gotcha. I crammed 52 pages into my zine, Mutants. It's a little thick, but I haven't had any complaints yet. Really cool to see you do a print at home format. Yeah, that was kind of important to me. I mean, we could have just made a PDF and just said, here you go. And then it could be as many pages as you want because you're not having to work with signatures and all that kind of stuff. But it was important to me to basically make it so that you could print it if you wanted to, but you didn't have to. You know what I mean? And that's why there's two versions. When you buy it, you get both downloads, which is one where each page is its own page. You can just flip through it on your tablet, phone, laptop, computer, whatever, and be happy with it. The booklet version of it, there's a file in there, it's called booklet, is all the pages is already laid out in spreads so that you can print it that way. Adobe has the ability to print a booklet from a normal PDF, but within the last several years, they've taken away the ability to change the margins when you want to print a booklet. So the first booklet that I printed had this really wide margin here and on the bottom and on the top, like really wide, like at least twice, if not a little over twice as wide as the margins that we currently have here. And this one, excuse me, this one's not printed perfectly centered. You can kind of see here that the margin here is a little bit narrower than it is over here, but that's just my printer being weird. That happens. Zines are never perfect, but Adobe. Anyway, yeah, because I thought, what am I doing wrong? I must have laid something out wrong. Because I remember printing Space Weirdos using the same thing where you just tell it, hey, print this as a booklet, and it went da-da-da-da, and it was great. It worked awesome. And so I started doing some research online. I'm like, why can't I change the margins? What's going on? And then all of a sudden I found out all these other comments and stuff like that. Like on Adobe's tech forums and stuff like that. People are like, why did you take this away? And just, yeah, they just did. So you can set the margins, but then when you go over to the other tab and say now print it as a booklet, it gets rid of that, and you can't. So you either have to print it normal, like as normal pages. So I had to basically output it in booklet format so you could print it as normal pages and then fold them properly and all that kind of stuff. It's a thing, but I figured it out. Don't know where that's coming from. All right, so let's see here. Wikipedia says Lima, Locomotive Works indeed made M4A1s until December 43, And the first nuclear detonation was in 45, so a bit of fiddling with the history was required. See, there you go. Boom. I always thought of indie games like movies. Might be watched just once, but it was a great watch. Might come back to it if it's good, but doesn't require countless sequels. Yeah, that's the thing is that and it's not just GW, it's, Marvel movies. It's like all kinds of stuff like that where it's like, well, we got to keep making these and keep making these. And Vince and I keep making games. We just don't keep making add-ons and add-ons and add-ons and add-ons for the one game. Partially because we would get bored. I'm going to be perfectly frank with you. It's not so much because we're like, oh, well, this is great business sense. If anything, it's probably not. But the benefit is that, like, when we launched Reign in Hell, we had people who reached out who were like, I really want to support you, but I don't like demons. Or, my family is weird about, that kind of thing and whatever, which I totally get, whatever. Or, hey, it doesn't have any range attacks and I don't like just hand-to-hand combat games. That seems boring to me or whatever. There were reasons why people didn't want to buy, some people had reached out and said, hey, I like what you're doing. This is cool, and that's fine. So then when we came out with Space Station Zero, then they were like, oh, okay, well, this is different and it's got guns and there's no demons in it. And that's pretty cool. And so, but I'm sure there were people who were like, I don't like Space Station games or whatever. I don't know. But, if you just make the one thing and then, hitch your wagon to that one star, if people don't like that star, even if it's just some people, well, then those people are never going to buy any of your stuff because you've decided this is the thing that I'm putting, this is the basket into which I'm putting all my eggs, which that's why we kind of like to spread things around. So, yeah. I think the difference is when players ask for more rules and content from the source, and GW churning out to generate FOMO. Yeah, I can see that too, to some degree. When people are like, hey, we would like more, I get that. I don't want to make it like a requirement for sure. I don't want to make it something that people expect either. But I think this format, like, honestly, like the add-on here for Space Station Zero is 2 pages. It's just basically some equipment. And it's a little bit longer of a thing for Reign in Hell, where it adds an entire new philosophy, aka a new faction. And it also adds in 2 new scenarios you can play. So that's pretty cool too. And then next year, because we're going to be doing this yearly, that's the plan, is this zine is going to happen probably early November. You know what I mean? So the next one will come out about a year from now, and it will have probably a micro game in it, kind of like, as far as to scale, as far as the number of pages and things like that. It'll have a little micro game. Who knows what it'll be yet? I don't know. Like, we have some ideas, but we haven't really picked which one we're going to go with for next year yet. Now, the game coming out in spring, like probably late May, which will have the full color cover and be, you'll be able to buy it in print and all that kind of stuff, kind of like Majestic 13, Space Station Zero, Reign in Hell. That game we are heavily like into already. Like, design is, I would say, initial game design is easily halfway done, if not a bit further. But yeah, we've been working on that for a while. So that's in progress. And like I said, the next game should be coming out in, like I said, probably late May of 2024. I love the title being a pun. You're going to get the dad joke, Living Gamer Market. It was a thing, like, I had this idea. Did I even just put it in the thing? I should go back to that file real quick. I was looking at it last night. Let's see here. Okay. Probably a mini game. Post-apocalyptic. After testing the bomb during World War II, it actually burned off huge portions of the atmosphere, as some folks feared. And now all that's left to fight are tanks. And then it says, parenthetically, use Flames of War size tanks or bigger, ? So you can customize your tanks as much as you want, visually, Turning could be inversely linked to speed, which I don't think we really did. That seemed like we talked about it, but it was one of those things that got a little bit too nitpicky. Going fast, can't turn much. So I did not have tanks for the apocalypse in the initial thing, but Yeah, that's I don't know. I don't remember exactly when I came up with the name, but because I remember telling it to Vince and he thought I said thanks for the apocalypse. And so he started writing and was using that. I was like, no, it's tanks for the apocalypse. Like it's a play on words. And he's like, oh, and then we had to go through and do some initial find and repeat or find and replace, whatever. It's not about a game being supported. People just want more content for a game they enjoy. Seems fair enough to me. Yeah, I suppose. I'm partly, I feel like a very early comment on Reign in Hell was like, so when's the first expansion? And we're like, we don't plan on doing expansions. And then this person was like, oh, so the game's dead then. Like that has stuck in my head like hard. This was like literally within the first couple of days of the game going live. And I was like, that's a weird thing to think about. I understand people wanting more. I get it. But I just didn't want to be like, hey, get ready for more. It's coming constantly and you're going to have to buy it. You know what I mean? That's the line, I guess, that we're trying to not tread on or whatever. So yeah, I get what you're saying though. Apocalypse Plow is amazing. That's a pretty good name. It is. Yeah. I miss one model games. It was me. It was got me into BattleTech and keeping me away from it now. I know, like, why can't BattleTech just be like, why does it have to be like 12 models on 12 models or whatever? Or a lance on a lance is generally the case. Usually like more like 4 or 5 against 4 or 5. Yeah, no, that's when we used to play BattleTech when I was a little kid, when I was like in middle school, the very first time back before we even had models, they were just little cardboard standees. It was generally you had one and your opponent had one. And it was fun that way. You know, any game can be single player. Look at chess. I mean, sure, yeah, but people do like to have the, you know, my wife sometimes likes to play some of those train games that used to be made by Mayfair. I don't know who makes them now. Empire Builder, Euro Rails, all those different types of kind of crayon train games, board games. She'll sometimes play them against herself just so she can kind of learn the board, like when she got Russia Rails or China Rails or something like that, you know, to learn, like when you're playing, let's say, you know, Empire Builder, which takes place in America, and you're like, oh, you have to take oranges from, you know, Orlando to Detroit. Well, you know where those are. But when you're like looking at a country like China, if you don't know its geography too well, you're trying to figure out, well, where is that? You know, and is this a good trip to take or not or whatever? So there's some benefit to playing games by yourself, for sure. But it's even a little bit more fun when there's like, when you're not driving that second player, you know what I mean? There's some sort of rule set, but it's, again, it's also sometimes, it's a lot of text sometimes, and it's also can be sometimes a little clunky depending on how you do it. If you're bringing in tractors, you could go into all kinds of heavy equipment, sure. Remember the dude who made the armored bulldozer? You mean killdozer? I don't know if it's actually called that or not, or if people just called it that. I'm not sure, but with tanks only, you can use similar models and keep all other scales, sure. Nice thing about, whoops, dang it. Joseph, where are you, Joseph? There. Nice thing about tanks is that it's simple enough that if you really want to do solo play, just adapt the AI model from one of the other games. Like you say, it's your game played how you like. Absolutely, for sure. International Plastic Modeling Show. Oh, that's pretty cool. Nice. Rainy Puckle Church. Puckle Church is fun to say. Working on some Moonstone models. Nice. International Plastic Modeling Society. Ah, there you go. We live in a society. I can't understand this obsession with ongoing game support as well. It's not like a video game where the support is often necessary to work at all. I mean, I definitely think that if there's issues, even just frequently asked questions, then you definitely want to put that out there for people to get at. Like answering questions, like not just being like, okay, well, we're done. We're not touching it anymore. The reason you have a Discord channel for like the reason we do it is so that people go there and go, hey, this is confusing. And if enough people are like, yeah, that is confusing or whatever, then we're going to talk about it so that people don't, you know, they can just download the FAQ and all that kind of stuff. Like we don't have an FAQ yet for Snarl, but it's only been up for a couple of days. So, you know, it will take some time for the questions to become frequently asked so that we can then make the document. But Vince has been like, once the game launches, then I'm a lot about marketing. and Vince is a lot about answering rules questions. So yeah, that's the Discord. If you go to the snarlingbadger.com website, up in the header up there's a Discord icon. You click on that, and then you can join the Discord, and it's pretty cool. And it's a good place to see pictures and of the hobby stuff that people are doing for the different games, and also ask questions, other rules questions and stuff like that. Gaddis Gaming makes all 19 different variations of the Sherman. Nice. And Weird War options. Neato. West End Games made a Tank Girl RPG. It uses the same system as Tales from the Crypt, I believe. Tales from the Crypt, you say, as an RPG. That's interesting. Speaking of Battle Badgers, how is Rick? Haven't seen him around forever. Where did I bump into him last? Gen Con? I know we had a conversation at Adepticon, but I might have just bumped into him and said hi at Gen Con. But yeah, I think he's doing pretty well. Tank Girl RPG exists, has alternate damage system of pick up your dice pool and throw it at somebody. Jeez. I mean, I guess makes kind of sense. We used to play Car Wars Tank Battle in November every year, and we call it Thanksgiving. Nice. Yeah, definitely Car Wars had a tank kind of like add-on thing. So if you're like, well, let's not play with cars, let's play with tanks. Yeah, for sure. Building in my new hobby space. Nice. For the person asking about making your own game, Vince Venturella did an interview talking about it. For sure, yeah. Was it done trapped under plastic, or was it someplace else? Speaking of Vince, well, he's at a tournament this weekend. He's at Holy Havoc in Northern Illinois this weekend. But Warhammer Weekly, the show that he does on Wednesdays, Warhammer Weekly on Wednesdays, I will be a guest on that show on Wednesday this upcoming, and we're going to talk about the game and all that stuff. So we got that going on. So if you're interested, go watch that show too. We'll talk about probably more designy stuff, like game designy stuff, as opposed to visual designy stuff, you know. I really like the artist that we worked with. His name is Nathan J. Anderson. He did the cover down here, and I did the logo. That's, you know, that's kind of my job. I'm real happy with the logo too. I think the logo and the name turned out really nice. I was pretty happy about that. But he also did some of the internal art too. He did this piece here, and he also did, I think we got him to do 3 different pieces. He did the one with the burning trees as well. So this piece over here. But yeah, I found him on Twitter. I've been following him for a while. I like his work. And I was real happy to be able to work with him, and we want to work with him again on future stuff as well. But yeah, he was a good guy. Nathan J. Anderson. He's got a website too. We didn't want to go crazy with the artwork because we knew, because this thing is inexpensive and it's not going to be as interesting as our bigger games to as many people. You know what I mean? We didn't want to spend tons of money, like, you know, because to make a game, even a thing like this, you got to pay for art. And then, because we're not doing AI, no, that's just plagiarism software is what that is. So you got to pay for art, and then we pay Tommy, Tom Lyons. He's our lead developer. So basically we get the game designed, and then we throw it at Tom, and then Tom goes through and tries to break everything. And by mathematically, like, he goes through and goes, well, if you did this and this and this, then all of a sudden you can't lose, or if you do this and this and this, you can't win, or whatever. And so he goes through, like, he's got a background in doing that kind of stuff. So, you know, we pay him for that. And then we also pay Tyler Emerson, who's also very frequently on the Warhammer Weekly show. He goes through and is our initial copy editor, proofreader kind of guy, and all that kind of jazz, and goes through and does that. And then we also, after that's done, then we run it through my wife, who we don't pay, but, you know, she joint marriage thing. And then, yeah, so there's like art costs, and then, you know, a couple other costs. And so it's one of those things where you don't want to like go crazy on the art in this type of situation, because you're not going to make as much money as you do with the other ones, just because it's cheaper. And it's also, like I said, not as I think, interesting to as many people. I think that there are people out there that who are like, oh, wow, this is very cool because it's a zine. It's very cool. I like that. But there's other people out there that are like, I kind of want to get a thing printed and sent to me, or, I'm looking for something that's a little bit more substantial. That happens too, for sure. Are there any Armored Train war games? Not that I've seen, no. Interesting to see if someone else has finished work on the table. Nice. There is a prepping channel called Rule the Wasteland. For a second, I thought you might be doing a simulcast with its creator. Guess not. Prepping. You mean like prepping for the apocalypse kind of thing? Or like, yeah, I have, no, I am, the entirety of my prepping for the apocalypse is one of these days I'm going to go to the local sporting goods secondhand store and get some football shoulder pads so that when the world turns into Road Warrior, I mean, I'll need to probably spray paint them black. Plus, I think sometimes they make them in black, don't they? Yeah. That's the best I got. Otherwise, I'm just going to I'll be the first against the wall when the apocalypse comes. Something like Tank Girl's Tank, that's pretty crazy. Plus a fun movie. Yeah, I was a big fan of the comic book, and when they made the movie, I was like, yeah, it's not bad. I'm gonna throw some chaos bits over the tank, like a chaos rhino. I don't know about that. Because my thought process is like, where would they get those pieces? My thought process is like, what can you put, like if you were, I don't know. I'm thinking about just putting a lot more bones on it. I have a bunch of different, like I have some Wargames Atlantic and Wargame Foundry or something like that. I've got a couple different sets of like skeletons. The Wargame Foundry ones I'm pretty sure are out of production, but those skeletons are very thin. You know how a lot of like skeletons in like wargaming are surprisingly chunky because otherwise you'll touch them and they break, right? So like, GW skeletons are always like, if your skeleton actually looked like that, you would be monstrous because like your bones are like this big around, to scale. That's why the Imperial Guard looked that way. the old Imperial Guard. The new Imperial Guard don't look that way, so they must have like regular skeletons. But the old Imperial Guard, they're very big boned. Let's just say that. But Wargame Foundry, I think was the name of the company. They're out of business. They made a set of skeletons which were very like they looked right to scale, which also meant they were incredibly delicate. Like if you were going to actually build miniatures out of them and use them, they would have been like, But man, if you just take them and just start cutting them up into parts and being like, oh, I need a bunch of bones littered around here on the base of my whatever, they're great for that. And so I think I'm going to probably I want to definitely go like full, like, well, maybe not full, but I definitely want to go kind of, Firefly or Serenity, that movie, like the Reavers. Like that was a little bit of why I wanted to put red on that other tank, but I really want to go a lot more. So I could see definitely trying to put spikes on the tank, but I would have to make them out of wood or make them look like they were made out of wood. You know what I mean? Like something like just having a bunch of cool metal spikes. Like in the apocalypse, you don't have, like, where are you going to get those from? Unless I found like really cool, it'd be great. Ooh. The Garden of Moor from GW, which is basically kind of that kind of like graveyard mausoleum thing for Age of Sigmar. If I could get some parts from that, like the wrought iron fence stuff, like that would make sense. You find a wrought iron fence and you're like, oh, cool, I'm just going to somehow strap this to the tank. That would make some sense. I would think you could still weld in the apocalypse, couldn't you? If you found the right stuff. I don't know. It's all kinds of ideas. Dusseldorf, how you doing? Let's see here. People talking about rail wars and such. Is your new game suitable for a Necromunda Ash Waste style game? I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, basically, you're playing 2 to 10 players. Everybody has a single tank, and you drive around and you shoot each other. There's terrain. There's ramming. You can ram into each other. You don't really have real fancy, like, main armament shells because you stole a tank. It doesn't mean you stole ammo. Like they're not made in the same spot generally. So your shells are mainly kind of made out of like what you can find to some degree, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, generally, if you are in a tank and you're in the apocalypse wasteland, you are driving around and like you'll find like a group of survivors. Any small arms fire they have probably can't do much to you. So you are just menacing them, even if you don't even have like the coax gun or you don't have any like any kind of machine gun ammo. Although machine gun ammo you would think would be easier to find, but you couldn't make it. I think it would be harder to make. That all being said, you could have just run over their people. You know what I mean? Like you're in a tank. You should, you know, at the very least, you can run over all their huts and houses and stuff like that or whatever. And then so if you be like, look, if you don't want me to run over all your houses, give me some food or whatever. And so that's how you be a warlord in the apocalypse in my mind. But eventually you come up against another tank that is also trying to be a warlord, or maybe a group of them, and then it becomes a whole thing. Is it really a zine if it's not mimeographed? The problem, well, see, the problem with mimeograph is it's real hard to double side. For those of you who are young, mimeographing was like an alternative to photocopying. If you were a kid, like way back in the 70s and 80s, sometimes you'd get like a work page or something like that at school and they would bring it to you. It would be printed on white paper, but it would have kind of a bluish sort of ink and it would smell kind of, oh, that's weird. It was like a weird smell to it. That's mimeographing. And it was weird. Like you typed on this special type of paper and it became kind of like its own little weird printing press. And I've always thought that it would be kind of cool to have a mimeograph. But the problem is that if you remember back in the day, when you try to double side a mimeograph, it looked like crap, like because it kind of bleeds through. So I like the concept of doing that for a zine, but generally most zines were photocopied that I remember back in the day. But mimeograph would be cool if it wasn't so, if it didn't bleed through the paper so much, but that would be cool. Love the stink of the old mimeograph. Oh yeah, those were great. I'd love a mini war game with fantasy RPG elements like 4th edition D&D, but a bit larger scale. Nice. What kit did you use your tank that was in your video? Both of those are the Warlord kits. I could get them right here in town. So they're the Warlord M4 Sherman medium tank is that's the ones that I used. And then I went onto eBay and I did a search for 28mm tank stowage. Stowage is the important word. STOWAGE, stowage. Like you have things you need to stow, and the things that you stow are known as stowage, I guess. And I bought like a resin kit of a bunch of, you know, like that kind of giant tarp thing in the front is from that. And there's like another tarp thing hanging off the back and whatnot. But then I also bought a Rubicon models. They make a hard plastic stowage kit as well that has like extra wheels and extra treads and stuff like that. In World War II, crews would be like, well, we have this extra tread that we broke or whatever. And they would like affix it somehow to the side of the tank with the idea that, well, maybe it's a little bit extra armor because these Shermans, they could use a little bit extra armor. So my thought process is to kind of do the same thing with the tanks, add more stowage, add, you know, this is for the people who are driving around in the apocalypse and they're Sherman, this is kind of their home now. You know what I mean? Like, so they've got to carry stuff and keep stuff on there and all that kind of jazz. So. Let's see here. We went to Fall In and it was a lot of fun. Some incredible gaming tables. A lot more sci-fi than normal. Oh, that's pretty cool. I've heard of that one. If you don't leave with purple fingers, did you actually print it a zine? Well, there's that too, I suppose. Sunny Oakland, California. How you doing? It's nice not to worry about a new edition coming every few years. Yeah, that's the other thing too. Uncle Adam, we have been taught by marketing departments that we need new stuff for a game for it to be fun and relevant. See, that is the problem, isn't it? They've not released a supplement for chess. Chess is a dead game. I mean, it's sad. Everything moved. Thanks for nothing. See that there. Sail Power is a one model per player game as well. Could this be a dawn of a new age with tanks and sailing ships? Could be. Love the variety and really enjoy making up new models every year for your games. Really gets my creative ideas legs and keeps me enthused in the hobbies. That's the idea. That's what the things we like to hear, honestly, is because I like when people are like, what am I going to do for this game? Like, well, how am I, what kind of freedom do I have to build, forces, kit bash stuff, do stuff like that? Like, to me, that's the really interesting part of the hobby. The whole, like, I play this game, so therefore I have to buy their miniatures, and then I paint them the way that they look in the book, and then I play them and I pay attention to just that lore and whatever. I'm not saying that people are wrong for doing it. It's not my interest area. You know what I mean? So I do try to maybe, but the fear is, to some degree, is that some people think that, well, that's just the way it is. That's the way that this whole hobby is, and it's not. So that's why I like to try to tell people, look, there's other things you can do too, and it's kind of interesting and cool, and you can do what you want. You can still play those other games that are like very much like this is this is this is this, and you can also do this other crazy crap and come up with all kinds of neat stuff and have a good time and have some sort of freedom in doing that. And I enjoy that creativity. You know what I mean? Let's see here. Content treadmill to keep the game alive is a complete fabrication for selling mountains of stuff. Yep, you're right, Jim. It's an addicting cycle, and most of us are predisposed towards falling into it. Yeah, oh, for sure. Honestly, periodic updates in zines is a great way to do the updates, and for games as small as yours, there isn't really a hardcore competitive scene to worry about. You don't need to buy the new stuff. Oh, yeah, absolutely. The whole concept of anybody ever making a tournament out of one of our games is weird. Like, I just don't think that's ever going to happen, and I'm totally fine with that. Now, a big event at a convention, like that's the Tanks for the Apocalypse. I want to see people running this at conventions. I'm trying to figure out a way to have an event at Adepticon and let people know about it. So everybody has to bring their own, Sherman, and then we could play, 10-player game and all that kind of stuff and have like a good time like that. I think that would be a fun thing to do. Same with TMX. I think it'd be fun to do at TMX too. It will be later in the year. But yeah, so I think that would be a definitely fun thing to do. That's part of what this game is about, is like, because initially when I was first kind of just like thinking about it in my head, I was like, so it's, it's one-on-one usually. And then I think it was Vince that was like, we could put a lot more tanks in there if we wanted to. And so we started, the playtesting that happened. So that was cool. Why can't games be one model? You act like you don't know any miniature war gamers. I mean, I think very frequently it's a lot more also miniature wargaming companies. Like if you were like, hey, we made this game and you just need one model. If they were a big enough company, they'd be like, no, you need a lot of models. What you need is more models, always more models. And so because we don't sell models, we don't necessarily prescribe to that particular opinion. I'd love to see a war game about anthropomorphic cats called Apocalypse Meow. But it's already taken. Well, there you go. If it's one-on-one, you lose out a lot of initiative shenanigans, ranking, rear arc, split fire. Yeah, I suppose that's probably true. I don't know. I get making tons of updates, but a standalone is great too. I'm between spending a filthy fortune on games and why can't we still play first edition? Yeah, I mean, it is hard to kind of go up against it and go, well, what if we didn't do that, And the sun has come out and is sort of nuking me a little bit with the light. I'm going to be moving, not a house. This is our house. I don't want to go but I'm going to be moving this. Now, I've talked about in the past how I was going to be moving this eventually down into the basement. The basement is still in progress very, very, very slowly. But now that the game is out, it can speed up again. So that's a benefit there. But hopefully by the end of the year, knock on wood, the plan is that I'm going to be setting up in the sunroom with my new computer and all that stuff. And that will become my office where I do game design, layout, I do video editing, and I would also be doing every other Sunday show from the sunroom. Now, the sunroom is sunny, hence the name. So we're going to get some window shade type things and stuff like that. That'll hopefully help. But yeah, that will be a new thing, and hopefully it will come sort of soon. We've already picked out a paint color. And I have a lot. Yeah. There, during the Black Friday sales, allegedly at Lowe's, the blinds that we're thinking about getting are going to be on like sale for a lot, maybe half off. So we're kind of waiting for that. But yeah, most likely the painting will happen while I am gone at VincyCon, because my wife likes to paint when I'm gone, because she doesn't particularly want me to help, which is fine by me. I think painting miniatures has made me a very slow wall painter, is probably a big part of it. But anyway, so yeah, that'll happen hopefully sometime by the end of the year. So that'll be a thing. Still working on the basement, but moving my office. Part of it is I don't want to, like, when I go into the basement, I want to do hobby stuff, but I don't want to be down there all the time for, editing, for, layout, for all that other stuff. And this computer here is getting old. This is old. The video card in this computer is a GTX, not even an RTX, 750 Ti. So it's old and it's getting angry, I think. So yeah, I got a new computer, got new monitors and stuff like that. It's all going to go in the sunroom, which is going to maybe be a little bit of a bummer to our scaredy cat, Carlson. He likes to hang out in the sunroom, but he doesn't like to be in there sometimes when somebody else is in there. So I feel bad about that, but I don't know. We can't just have like one room just for a cat. Like he has to be able to like, either like he could deal with it. He could hang out in there. We could get him a thing. We could get him a new cat bed, like a little cat house that he could hang around in and stuff like that and feel good about himself. When I first met him, he was in like a cat house thing, like, it's like a big thing with a hole in it. And he was in when we first saw him at the shelter. Let's see here. For my game, I've completely skipped the scale question by listing ranges and tiles so people can make the board whatever scale they want. That's a good idea. Notion of indie game often means developing your own content, but I guess that is not in vogue. Sure. I'm late, so you may have answered this already. What's the best place to find 28mm tanks? If you go to our website, snarlingbadger.com, there is a section called news, which is kind of like the blog kind of update, news section. And we have posted a news article. The most recent one went up on Friday, and it was, there's I don't know, 4, 5, 6 different links in there for different places to get 28mm Shermans. So I would check the website there. Yeah, snarlingbadger.com. I think it's snarlingbadger.com/news, and then it will show you all the news articles. I think that's what it is. When does tanks for the apocalypse take place? I understand the bomb of 45 cost the apocalypse, but when does the game take place? Probably late 40s. I would assume, like, it wouldn't be too far past that, but you have probably, yeah, it's most likely late 40s. Let's see here. Armored bulldozer that went on a rampage is generally called killdozer. That's what I thought. You can buy direct from Warlord Games depending on where you live. Sure. Just joined, not sure if anyone said, but Wargame 3D has several different Sherman STLs if you're looking to print your own. Yeah, I mentioned that in the article. Like, I just gave people links to like stuff that was pre-built, but I'm like, I'm sure there's also, dozens and dozens of different Sherman STLs out there that you could look at and find if you're into 3D printing. But I hadn't gone through and done the research to find a bunch of them or anything like that. I just figured, you know where My Mini Factory and Cult 3D and etc. are, so it's not too hard to find. I did a very cursory glance to see, are there actually Sherman tank STLs out there? And there are, but yeah. Because I would have felt like really dumb if they'd been like, nope, no one's ever made a STL for a Sherman tank before. Weird. I was like, oh, wow, it is weird. Scaling tanks down to a pocket game for travel play would be pretty fun and easy to do model wise. Yeah, I mean, if you used whether you used the tanks game from Battlefront Miniatures, which was, there's a World War II version, which I think they still make. They also had Tanks the Modern Age, which they stopped making, which sort of bummed me out. But yeah, you could either use that or Flames of War, that type of stuff. The only, well, I was going to say the only downside, but I don't know if it's actually really a downside. The downside is you generally can't buy one tank very easily for Flames of War. You usually buy them in sets of 3 or maybe even more. But on the other hand, that's not bad because then you could easily make enough tanks for you and your friends and they wouldn't have to, you know. Don't buy the black shoulder pads. You get much more credit if you can see white scraps of paint showing through. Weathering adds credibility. Yeah, I can see that. That's a good point. But what if you bought black ones and then spray painted them red? Ooh. They are big boned. Exactly, yeah. Let's see here. Rule the Wasteland channel is about prepping for the apocalypse. I'm not much of a prepper. I had shoulder pads from when I played semi-pro football. I gave them away regrettably. See, there you go. Yeah. So you're taking an A-team build approach. They made it with whatever they had at hand, and they could weld, bolt, or duct tape on. I mean, it's the apocalypse, so yeah, I would think so. I'm currently crunching ideas about my first game. Plan to do a Zeppelin-based fleet game, kind of like Armada. Neat. Wargames Foundry is still in business, though its ownership has changed at least once. Yeah, I think it was Wargames Foundry. Like, I own, what do I own from them? I own some post-apocalyptic, like, men, post-apocalyptic women. So there's, like, great, like, hard plastic sets of, like, all these different characters with all kinds of different guns, different heads, they're just really good kit bash sets. And then I also own some skeletons. And they made some, like, guys called shock troops way back in the day, which were kind of like Death Corps of Krieg, but not quite. Wargames Foundry is now back in the hands of the original owner. Oh, nice. Cut plastic I-beams to make spikes. I can see that, sure. Model railway fences. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Wargames Factory, not Foundry. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. I was literally about to suggest Renedra's graveyard fencing for spikes. Oh, that makes sense, sure. Friend had an interesting question to see if someone would survive long in the apocalypse. Question was, do you or do you not have a bug out bag? Sure. 28mm Sherman tank would be like 156 scale. Tanks from the bolt action game. Yep. HO scale is 148. Yep. Just joined in. Always love this show. Nice. Cocktail sticks with the arrow tips would make for cool spiky bits. Oh, the plastic ones? Yeah. That's a good point. Yep. Hey, Michael. You could make metal spikes out of hollow needles that could look like cut and welded lampposts. Nice. Anytime I hear about spikes on tanks, I recall a kid who thought it would be a good idea to glue a number of 11 X-Acto blades to his model as decoration. That's not a good idea at all. That's a terrible idea. I bought some tiny sticks long ago and sanded a point to them with a Dremel. They were originally for Palisades for a Viking game, but those will work for tank spikes. Oh yeah, for sure. Wargames Factory was run into the ground by Tony Reedy. Thrice curse his name. I don't know Tony. And then Warlord took their products over in a nutshell. There's more, but it's a complex story. See, I thought that like a Chinese company like kind of took his stuff, and then there was some things that I don't know. It's been around for a while. If it's the one I'm thinking of. Eureka have the most accurate skeleton I've found. Eureka miniatures? I've always known them to be metal stuff, but I guess metal would make some sense for skeletons. It'd be a little bit stronger at that thinness. You know what I mean? Ours was purple and we called them Ditto sheets. Yeah, some people did. Yeah, I don't know if it was a brand name or what, but I remember some people referring to those as Ditto instead of the other name. Yeah, mimeograph. They were Ditto sheets instead of mimeograph. Maybe you could scent the paper like mimeograph. I don't even know how you would do that. Wouldn't they just use metal fences as the metal spikes? Those stylish metal... yeah, maybe. That's what I was talking about, yeah. Cathedral religious tank? Possibly. Super fresh. They were also a little damp. Yeah, oh yeah. No, definitely. I remember them, you know, your teacher would bring them in and hand them out. Everybody would be like, this is slightly moist. Yeah. Having your parents work in an office that has Xerox machine revolutionized. Oh yeah, revolutionized zine making. I worked on a fanzine in high school. A couple of friends of mine, they were and I was as well, but they were way bigger than I was. But Star Trek nerds. We were like Star Trek nerds, and they were way bigger Star Trek nerds than I was. And they started a Star Trek fanzine, and then I became the art director. And one of the guys, one of the editors, his grandparents bought him a used photocopier from a church that could print 11 by 17. So our zine was 8.5 by 11. It was like a good size. And we had like, I think at one point, I don't know, maybe like 150 subscribers, and they were getting mailed all over the place. And it was a whole thing. Yeah, it was fancy business. Played my first game of Kill Team a few weeks ago. I'm addicted now. Super fun. Nice. Is a mimeograph the same as a Ditto? I think so, yeah. Ditto might have been a name brand? Yeah. So did Bill's making stuff copy you, or did you copy him with Tonks? I think that neither of us copied either of us. No. I know Tonks came out before our game did, because our game just came out this weekend. I've never looked at Tonks. I remember seeing a thumbnail for one of Bill's videos that had the word Tonks on it, and at the time I was like, I like that word. That's a funny word. But I haven't even watched the video, and so yeah, I had somebody ask yesterday on the stream. They're like, "Oh, is this like the same game?" And I'm like, probably not, because that would be weird if it was the same game. I mean, it's a game about tanks fighting tanks, I guess, but I think that I don't know this because I haven't looked, but just from what I've known of watching some of Bill's work, I'm assuming the tanks are all scratch built out of like beads and pop cans and stuff like that, or whatever, where, you know, we're doing a different thing there, and I don't even know what their system's like. So yeah. But yeah, that's I do like the word Tonks. That's a lot of fun. 52 excuse me, 52 miniatures. How you doing? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well as well. Theme tank designs from the 40s would be fun. Cowboy themed, pirate themed, big stars and stripes. I was like trying to look up 1940s graffiti, and all you ever find is that whole Kilroy was here thing, which I read a thing about it on Wikipedia, and it was interesting to see like where that came from and stuff like that. And it's still not completely known, but there's some relatively good ideas about where that kind of came from, and it was interesting. So yeah. Anyone else just thinking battle tanks for the Nintendo 64? Never played that. We never had a Nintendo 64. Had the original Nintendo, like the NES, and then we had a Genesis, I think, but it was a friend of my brother's. We were like borrowing it for like a really long time or something. I don't know exactly how that worked out. And then it wasn't until I moved out on my own and I bought a PlayStation 1. So yeah, we never really had a lot of video gamage around the house. Won't the factory have welding equipment? Probably. I feel kind of like in a lot of like extraction shooter video games, you don't want to hang around the factory. You want to get in there, get your tank, and get out. You don't want to be like, hey, we're going to hang out at the factory, because that's everyone. A lot of other people are going there as well, and it becomes kind of a point of contention, and there's going to be a lot of fighting going on there. There are a lot more options for stowage if you look for 48th scale as well. There are lots of resin manufacturers, and 28 isn't a recognized scale outside of wargaming. Sure, but like I said, between Rubicon and whatever that stuff was that I got off of eBay, there was plenty of stuff out there. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more in different scales. Welding machines will be prevalent. The consumables to weld and the electricity needed will become scarce. Yes, for sure. What is it when you're not... What is it when you're using gas instead of electricity? Is that still welding, or is that something else? I started watching your videos for painting larger 3D prints, but have begun to think that mini models would be fun as well. Don't even play tabletop games? Well, you should think about it if you're interested. We just made a zine right here. Me and my good friend Vince Venturella, also a YouTuber. It's called Snarl. This is the very first issue, and you can download it. It costs $8. And then you can print it if you want to, but you don't have to. And there's a game in there of tank-on-tank violence called Tanks for the Apocalypse. It's a post-apocalyptic tank battle game. It happens in the late 40s, basically. The Oppenheimer nuclear test from the movie, not the Barbie movie, the other one. It kind of set the atmosphere on fire, and a lot of people died. And by a lot, I mean most. And then you happen to live in the Midwest, and you live near Lima. Sorry, No, Lima, yes. Lima, Ohio, like lima beans, but that's not where they make lima beans. It's where they make the M4 Shermans for World War II. And so you have liberated an M4 Sherman, and then you and a couple of your friends are driving around the countryside being warlords and whatever, and then you come across other M4 Sherman people who have the same idea, and now you're having a tank battle. So that's fun. Taking submissions for future issue? I don't know. We've had some people ask about that, and I don't know if that's a thing. Do you mean Wargames Factory Skeletons? They were taken over by Warlord, and some of their games and figures were rebranded. Most. See, I don't remember if it was Wargames Factory. I thought it was Foundry, but I could be wrong. I'll have to go look. I'll have to look at the box. I don't get the GW need to make new editions. Money. That's what it is. Don't they make the most from minis? They do, but they could make even more if they made it so they had to buy a new book every 3 years or sooner. You know, and yeah, so yeah, that's the trick. There's never enough money when you're a big giant corporation. You need all the money, which is impossible, but they believe it's possible, even though they don't really. But everybody thinks that line must always go up in infinite growth, even though that's obviously ridiculous. So, you know. Why is it? There we go. Let's see here. Idea would be World War I tech using smaller airships for boarding. Oh, that's cool. Is there a campaign for tanks for the apocalypse? I'm having fun and silly ideas for one. Yeah, there is. It's very light. There is definitely a light kind of... You can get into... There's a post-game process section here. So you can repair damage, and then you can also get some upgrades. You know, and you can roll on a chart to get an upgrade. But most of the upgrades are generally just for the next game. But there is one that is a permanent upgrade and stuff like that. So there's it's light, but it's a jumping off point. Let's just say that for that. This tank is your home now. Thinking about adding sheds on top of the tank, transform it into a moving fortress, apocalypse style. I mean, that'd be kind of cool too. Yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to kit bashing. The Snarling Badger multiverse, Rain in Hell versus Majestic 13 is going to be sick. I mean, sure, I can see that. Tanks multiplayer 100% needs to happen at TMX for sure. Bill Making Stuff has been covering an indie game called Tonks that is also a multiplayer game where each player has a single tank. Have you looked at that? I haven't. See, I thought that Bill Making Stuff made Tonks. Did he not make Tonks? I remember just seeing, like, I remember because he's got a very, you know, kind of like I do, he has a style where you can look at his thumbnail and immediately know what it is because of the way that he kind of photographs and the fonts that he uses and stuff like that. Although I think he might be hand drawing the fonts, honestly, but I don't know. Nonetheless, I saw a Bill Making Stuff video that said Tonks, and I was like, again, like I said, that's a funny word. I like that word a lot. But I thought he made the game. You're saying here that somebody else made the game called Tonks? That's interesting. Sunroom sounds dangerous. We don't keep the sun in there. That would be dangerous. This game does seem a little like What a Tanker from the UK. What is the source for inspiration? The source for inspiration was probably a mini game. Post-apocalyptic, after testing the bomb during World War II, it actually burned off huge portions of the atmosphere as some folks feared, and now all that's left to fight are tanks. Use Flames of War-sized tanks or bigger, question mark. So you can customize your tanks as much as you want. Turning could be inversely linked to speed. Going fast can't turn much. That's literally, that is what was that's the idea that I had that I wrote down in my little file, and then that's where we kind of started from. What a Tanker from Two Fat Lardies. I'm familiar with the name. I've always been interested in trying it out, but I never have, and I don't own it. I saw someone playing it. What the heck show was that? Was it Las Vegas Open? It might have been LVO, like 2019 or somebody. I saw somebody running a game like that, and it was using those rules, but they were using tanks that were like chibi tanks. So it was like a bunch of different, like it was like US, I think, or maybe British and German tanks or whatever, but they were all like chibi tanks, you know, like they were like kind of just cartoon looking and they were crazy. And it was like, oh, that's kind of fun. So I mean, I don't know anything about their game. I believe it's probably a lot more going on. It's a lot of different types of tanks. Our game is just M4s. You're just M4s fighting M4s because they've all been, again, liberated from the place where they're being made. So yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily, like I said, I'm familiar with the name of the game and I know about Two Fat Lardies, but I don't know really anything about their game. So I don't think that was not the inspiration. Don't paint your walls with a 00 brush. I mean, that's the problem, right? If you move to the sunroom, we will have no cello case in the background. Change is bad. Well, I mean, we technically could still put Nick in the background if we wanted to. I don't know. Started painting my kitchen in 2018. Still unfinished. Like my pile of shame. Well, you know, it's a pretty small room. And there's not a lot of wall space because there's a lot of windows. I like the Battletech grinder format. Everyone gets a mecha and joins a huge death match. People learn the rules, progress through weight classes. It's a great institute. Yeah, oh, for sure. Especially for conventions and stuff like that. Like at TMX in the past, it didn't happen this year, I don't think. Or did it? I don't think so. But in the past, my friend Peter has run a game. It's a game, I don't know if they still make it anymore. It's called Silent Death. And it's a space combat game. And he runs this thing called Fly Till You Die, which we used to run at conventions when we used to volunteer for the company that made Silent Death, which was a company called Iron Crown Enterprises. And so in Fly Till You Die, you start out with like a class 1 ship, and you have to get, I think, like 4 points of damage on somebody else's ship. Not just one ship, but you could get 2 on this and 1 on that and 1 on that. And then once you got your check mark, okay, I got 4 damage, you get off the board in a certain spot. Like you had like a certain, you'd roll the die and then there were like letters around the board and okay, you go there. And then you get to come in with a bigger ship. And now you have to do 8 points of damage. And then so you could just leave and come in at any time. If you like walked up and you were like, what are you guys doing here? You'd be like, oh, it's this game. It's pretty cool. Oh, that's really cool. When are you guys going to run it next? You want to get in right now? You can get in right now. Okay, cool. You give them a tier 1 ship. They go out there. All they have to do is get some damage. They don't have to even kill the ship. Like they could go up against a big ship and at least do 4 points of damage off and get a bigger ship and come back. And if they're like, okay, this is cool, I got to go, it doesn't hurt the game. People be coming and going all the time. And it's kind of a neat concept. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And Grinder, the Grinder or whatever from from Battletech is kind of the same type of thing from what I know of it. I don't know that I've ever played. I've watched it played, so I understand the general concept. But that kind of thing at conventions is a smart move, because if it's like, we're playing a very specific game right now, if you would like to play in this game later, we'll be playing again in 3 hours. You'll need to be that people aren't going to come back. But if you're just like, yeah, sit down, we'll show you how to play, and you can do that, it works out really well. Love the zine, great idea. Well, thank you, I appreciate that, Nick. Stop painting walls with your modeling brushes. That does, yeah. Your wife sounds wise. Well, she is. I'm sure Nick will migrate with the move potentially. I mean, it's just over there, but let's see here. Most cats prefer simple boxes over fancy cat houses. We do have a sort of a fancier cat tree sort of thing, and the girls like it. So that's something. Carlson might like it too. Well, he doesn't like this one, but if we put one in there that's maybe a little bit more protective, I think he might like that. Diesel just woke up and he's walking around slowly. Does this mean your cat will start appearing in your shows? I don't know. My wife and I talked about that too, trying to figure out a way. There's a guy that I watch on Twitch. He's like a big Twitch streamer, Carnage. I don't know why that's his name. Maybe his last name is C-O-H-H. Anyway, he very frequently, because he's got like a green screen thing, so he's down in the lower corner, and very frequently there is like one of those cat tree things, and there's like a cat sleeping in it, you know. Or sometimes like he'll be playing a game and the cat is on his lap, and you can see the tail stick up once in a while and stuff like that down there, and that's a lot of fun. I wish I had a lap cat. That'd be great. Hopefully the sunroom might mean we get more on-stream fleecy parades. I guess it depends on the time. Like, I don't know. Maggie is sleeping somewhere right now. For your game, can you use M10s and Stewart M18s? They were made stateside. We don't have different stats for them. Like if you just want to use them as the models, you can knock yourself out and do that. That's cool. Although to be fair, like I know like Stewart's like was it M5 Stewart's? M3 Stewart's? What the heck were Stewart's? I don't remember. Anyway, Stewart's are considerably smaller than Sherman's to some degree. So I think it was M5 Stewart's. Anyway, yeah. So, you know, that would maybe, it wouldn't throw things off that much, I guess. But yeah. The part I enjoy about tanks in particular is the tank aspect. That makes sense. I get that. How you doing, Malev? Hope you're doing well. If you put a blonde haystack wig on your tank, it could be a Rod Stewart. Heyo, I get you. Let you know about the Kickstarter in like 4 years. There you go. Dacus Stewart is the only Stewart. Gotcha. I was wondering if that was the same robot crap. Oh, yeah. Let's not forget the M5 Stewart and the M10 Tank Destroyer. I'm sure they would be around in some warehouses. Probably. But, you know, you might be on a different part of the country. I don't know where those were built. I'd have to do some research into that. But are Dremel tools good for our hobby needs? Where do I begin that journey? I liked using Dremels for when I used to do more magnetizing and stuff like that. Dremels were actually relatively useful for that. Not always. Sometimes they go, if you get the kind that you can't like vary the speed, then it's just like too fast, and then you're like, whoops, I've drilled through the torso and my thumb. You don't want that. So you want something where you can control the speed a little bit better, and not all Dremels do that. Now Dremels are great for terrain, in my opinion, like using the sanding bit to, like, you know, you've cut out a piece of MDF and you want to kind of bevel the edges, so it's not just like here's the terrain straight on the sides. You want to have like a nice bevel. Those are great. Dremels are great for that kind of thing. But for drilling and stuff like that, I still generally have a tendency to use more like little, you know, pin vices is what they're generally called. Lee, how you doing? Tanks looks fun. Tanks for the Apocalypse. It is fun. It's a good game. As a tanker, I would not appreciate spikes in my tank when it's time to mount and dismount and do maintenance. Sure, I can understand that. Plastic Soldier Company does 1/72 tanks in boxes of 3 for about $30 per box, essentially 20 millimeter. Yeah, I always looked at Plastic Soldier Company. I might have bought some stuff from them back when I played Flames of War, but I haven't bought anything from them since. But a ram/plow on the front, yes, please. One of the models in the battle report, Vince put some sort of ram plate kind of thing on the front. Yeah. Good morning from Lake Lenore, Saskatchewan. Fun. Hobby took a hit this year, but one more week of work and then laid off until February. Going to try some Proacryl. I always say that wrong. Well, I hope that things go well. There's a game called Brutal Tank Battles, and it came out before Tonks. Guess what? People like tanks, more tank games. Yeah, I've heard of Brutal too, but I don't have because was it in Blaster? Or was it its own standalone, but from the Blaster people? I remember hearing about it, but I haven't like looked at it either. I think it's written by the same guy that did This Is Not a Test, which is Joe McGuire. I think it's Joe McGuire, not Joe McCullough. That's a different guy altogether. He did Frostgrave and stuff like that. But yeah, Joe McGuire did This Is Not a Test, and he also did Reality's Edge, which is like a cyberpunk kind of miniatures game for Osprey. And then I think he did Brutal, but I could be wrong on that. I feel like you told me about your tank game before. Bill making stuff posted any videos about Tonks. It's not like it matters who was first. Great minds think alike. Oh yeah, well, because we talked back in September when I was in Fort Wayne for the trade show.
And we started working on this game. We knew we were going to use it in the zine probably maybe late 2022, but we started working on it in earnest pretty much right after Majestic 13 came out. Like, we knew we were going to be doing it, but we didn't really start, like, Vince didn't really start, like, writing and stuff like that and designing until probably June. Yeah, I think it was about that. Maybe it was earlier. I mean, there was probably some work that was done earlier. I worked on RPG zones back in the days of cutting stencils to print them. My first copy of the D&D Red Box was completely photocopied by my dad on the work copier. Nice. I feel like you told me... I read that one. My friends and I had a zine around 94 to 95 about cartridge games and RPGs. Ironically, it was called Fantasy Flight, but my friend who started the zine didn't copyright the name. Yeah. Oh, RPG zines, not zones. There we go. That makes more sense. Yes. TIG welding. There you go. TIG welding, I thought was electric. I could be wrong. You can weld with gas, but it can also be brazing. All depends on how and what you're filling the joint. Gotcha. Don't know if you've seen Ben Has Hobbies YouTube. He did travel tank game set 6mm. No, I haven't heard of that. Mobile gas powered welder strap right in the back of an M4. Sure, I could see that. N64 was the biz. Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, GoldenEye were my jam when I moved out of home. Yeah, I never had one of those. I had friends that had them, but I never had one. A gentleman named Ben, who goes by Apocrypha now, created Tonks. It's a minimalist tank combat that is designed for smaller scale tanks. Bill's videos have introduced a lot of folks to it. Oh, okay. Now we know that. Gotcha. That's cool. Yeah, I thought it was a game that Bill made. I didn't realize that it was something that he was talking about. That's cool. You need gas to weld to prevent oxidization at the weld site. Gotcha. You can weld surprisingly easy with a battery, jumper cables, and a piece of coat hanger wire. I would think in World War II, I mean, there were car batteries back then, and they would have figured out how to, like, charge them back up again after, you know what I mean? Like, I'm assuming. Like, a battery is basically just like, I don't know, it's like a thing, and then there's some acid and some stuff, and there's, like, I don't know, some whatever. Yeah, I would think they could probably pull it off. Can I make a calliope in Tanks for the Apocalypse? I mean, we don't have any rules for a calliope, but you could write something if you wanted to. Wanted to say thanks for the video about Army Painter's new upcoming line. Made me very happy to be probably the only guy in my area who wants them. The Fanatic paints are really good. I am very, very, very excited about having people get a hold of them. They're just very creamy. They're very pigment rich, if you will. I've been super impressed. I think I mentioned this. I don't know if I mentioned it in the video, if I mentioned it someplace else, maybe on Twitter or Twitch recently. But like, when I first knew about an Army Painter, I knew about the war paints, and I bought some, and I was like, I mean, I like how many colors there are, but these are not necessarily great paints. They're okay. They take a little bit of work to kind of get working on your wet palette, and then they don't necessarily last super long on your wet palette, but they do okay. Some are better than others. But then when the airbrush paints came out, I was like, okay, cool. I like the triad thing. That seems very cool. And I started messing with them, and I was like, because I had been using mainly Vallejo, I think, was my general airbrush paint of choice. And when these came out, the air paints from Army Painter, I was like, wow, yikes, this is really, really, really good. And they became my go-to. It's pretty much the only stuff that I shoot through my airbrush anymore as far as opaque. And then, contrast paints came out, and I was like, yeah, these are pretty cool. I like them, and I was using them a lot. And then when the speed paint paints came out, I liked those a lot too. But at the time, the thing that was always kind of pushing me back was the fact that I couldn't dip. They were in a dropper bottle, and I couldn't dip my brush into the dropper bottle. You know what I mean? So I was still sticking kind of with contrasts. But when and I didn't have any real big problems with Speed Paint 1.0. I know some people talked about reactivation. I had a little bit of that once on a thing that I was doing, but well, maybe it happened twice, but it was like generally the way that I paint, it was never usually an issue. But that all being said, when the 2.0 stuff came out, I did notice that it took longer to dry, which means that it was generally a bit smoother when you would like paint this section, go back and get some more paint, and then paint this section. These two spots where they kind of overlap, you wouldn't get as much coffee staining anymore because they took a little bit longer to dry, and I liked that. The reactivation thing is not an issue either, and there's so many more colors. And then when my friend Matt told me that he saw a thing about using those silicone fidget poppers as that's what you drip your drips into, and then you can dip your brush into those little, then I just don't use the GW stuff anymore. I don't use contrast anymore because I like everything else about the dropper bottles. Also the fact that sure, you have to drip them into something else, but that silicone thing works great. It cleans out super easy. Everything's awesome. Secondly, you can't spill the like I have knocked over bottles on purpose of, speed paints, washes, all that stuff in dropper bottles, and they don't spill all over like a GW pot will. They don't dry out either. Anyway, so then they were like, okay, air paints, awesome. Speed paints, awesome. You guys are doing awesome work. And I was just like, I wish that their opaque paints were better. And then now here we are, and they're really, really good. So now, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a great time to be a hobbyist because the other big benefit is that, and I don't know the prices yet for the new paints, but I have a suspicion it's still going to be cheaper than, like, let's say Citadel, for their paints. I do think that because right now a bottle of like regular Army Painter paint, this is technically a wash that I have here, but like this size bottle of their normal war paints, which I think is 18 milliliter. Yeah. Retails for like $3.75. So because they're adding so much more pigment and all that stuff, it's probably going to go up in price, but I don't think it's going to go up that much. I don't think it's going to go up to like $5 a bottle or $6 a bottle or anything like that. I have a suspicion I'm betting if they were smart, they would make it slightly cheaper than GW paints still. You know what I mean? Because GW paints, their normal opaque line, I want to say is like $4.55 retail in America, or $4.60, $4.80, something like that, or $4.50. It's either $4.55 or $4. They have so many different prices for their stuff. I know contrast paints are $7.80. So yeah, the speed paint is way cheaper than that. So that's, I think, a good thing. But anyway, yeah, so I'm very excited to more people starting to get it in their hands. The Fanatic paints, as it were. Let's see here. Need an expansion with the B.A. Baracus character from A-Team for super welding powers. I mean, I can see that. You could just make your own, in your mind, your own, not collage, montage. That's the word I'm looking for. There you go. World Megacorp is always looking for their 165% market share. Indeed. Majestic 13 versus Rain in Hell is all fun and games until the Doomslayer is awoke. Oh yeah, no, that would be a problem. I can see that. Gas only used in MIG welding or oxyacetylene welding. There are two different, but still welding. Sure, makes sense. Have you seen the Cool Mini or Not is putting out a new skirmish game based on Songs of Ice and Fire? No rank and flank, which I know you dislike. Yeah, I did see that. I don't remember if it was on Twitter or someplace, but yeah, somebody posted a thing about it, and it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. The thing that's also interesting is that Night Models is also working on a skirmish game, but I think it's based off the TV show, because they're calling theirs Game of Thrones, whereas Cool Mini or Not is always referring to it as a Song of Ice and Fire. So I think one game is based off the books and one game is based off of the TV show, which is crazy, but whatever. It's something I'll take a look at, but I don't know. It's Cool Mini or Not. I'm a little, I'm not sure about that. One-on-one tank games remind me of Combat for the Atari, my favorite Atari game. Oh, that was a lot of fun. I remember playing that as a kid. Yeah, you could make it so that your shots were bounce around. That was a lot of fun. Could expand with new scenarios like Defend the Tractor Works in Stalingrad. Watch your video on making cleaner and wash for airbrush. Thank you for them. Absolutely. Welding and combustion engine require oxygen to work, just saying. And remember the legend of the Red Tiger, still in primer and paint. What color did the U.S. use during World War II? It's some sort of green. I don't know.
was definitely Wargames Factory who made the skeletons and the science fiction figures you mentioned. Wargames Foundry have never made plastic minis. Well, that must be the, yeah. Michael, how you doing? Can also have the proving grounds where a lot of tanks of all types are being tested. Sure, makes sense. Apocrypha now made tanks. Yeah, I'd never heard of that. You could upsize the game and play with kids' tank toys and play around in the lounge room. Sure, that'd be kind of cool. Anyone else played the Skyrim skirmish game, the one from Modiphius? Is it any good? How about Fallout Wasteland Warfare? Fallout Wasteland Warfare is cool, but it has a lot of tokens, like a lot of tokens. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different states that you are tracking. And when I say states, I don't mean like, you know, Wisconsin. I mean like player states, you know, like, oh, this guy is wounded and also poisoned. And so you have to have 2 tokens on him. And this guy he's got a stone in his shoe and he's kind of hungry. So you have to put down some tokens for this. And this guy is sad. And so we put, you know, that kind of, like, there's a lot of little tokens and little things you have to track and all that kind of stuff. More than I would like, frankly. So that's for me. But the models are kind of cool. And, you know, it's based off of Fallout, which is generally sort of cool. I'm not in as much love with Fallout as I used to be. I have been enjoying Starfield. I've been playing that on the Xbox. That's a lot of fun. That being said, it'll be interesting to see how this TV show for Fallout that Amazon is doing. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out. There's been a lot of like leaked pictures and things like that from sets and stuff, and it looks cool. Like it looks like they're definitely following the vibe, but I don't know how. It'll be interesting to see what comes of it. You know what I mean? After reading through Snarl, I've paused briefly at the bolt action models while picking up some stuff for my FLGS. I was chatting with the owner and he said, getting into World War II? And I said, no, just a new game. And he says, well, you're about the right age to be getting into World War II. Ouch. Yeah, I know. It is. It's like I said, the average age, it seems to be getting into like historicals and stuff like that. Very frequently, World War II seems to be the age of 42. That is according to the Wargame Soldier and Strategy magazine. They do the Great Wargaming survey every year, and for quite some time now, like, you know, according to the survey, the average age when a person starts getting interested in historical games is about 42, and that's exactly when it happened to me, and then it went away. But yeah, for a while there, I was definitely into Flames of War for a bit. My cat missed the firmware update. He's not much for sitting in boxes. Ours like to be in boxes, but yeah, they're not lap cats. If we get a firmware update for that would be cool. Stewart's were the M3 and then later the M5. Oh, okay. Yeah, we did generally, all the guys that, when we did play Flames of War, we did generally play late war. So that would, I guess, make sense. Let's see here. Going to see the Marvels today. Nice. Lap cats tend to prevent a significant amount of work. That's, I mean, sure, I get that too, but what about an Eastern European version with T-34s? I guess it doesn't really matter if everyone is using those or the Sherman stats. Now I want to buy tanks. See, there you go. I put a flex shaft attachment and a foot pedal on my Dremel. Much easier to control. Sure, I can see that. That's definitely cool. Everything can be a hobby tool if you're brave enough. Also true. Brutal was in Blaster from TNT Joe. You got it. Point is, tank games are awesome. Tank games are awesome. Absolutely. Brutal was in Blaster and is now a standalone in the Blaster. See, I thought it was also a standalone as well. Yeah, that was smart of them to kind of separate that stuff around. There's also a World of Tanks tabletop game. I'm not sure the scale. I think the scale is basically the same as like Flames of War. I think it's that same 15 or 20 millimeter scale. I've seen those at the local shop. Car Wars had Tank Wars rules. It's true. Yep. They also had Boat Wars and Aero something Wars. Did they just call it Aero Wars? Aero something. Aero Fight? I don't remember. But they also had Boat Wars and Tank Wars too. Hello from Portugal. Tank Charts is a great tank game. Wonderful system. All moves, shoots based on speed and training. I don't know that one.
I have a free game for Sencha Do from GUP. I can't possibly say where I got it now. I'm doing the Koala Creek Force in 15 millimeter. I don't understand like half those words. I'm not. I don't think I was getting what you were putting down. Sorry. Any welding is possible if you got a gas-powered generator. True. Back in the late 80s, called Ogre, which was named for a sentient tank. Is that a vehicle combat game? Never played, but just remembered. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's still, like, they still make it. Like, there's now, they came out with a new edition of it in the early 2010s. And, yeah, Ogre. But now it is, like, big. Like, I did the Kickstarter for when they made the 6th edition of Ogre, and the box that showed up. So the original Ogre came in, I think, a Ziploc bag, and then eventually it came like in this little plastic, like kind of hard black plastic, sort of like kind of clamshell sort of containery thing, not quite like a VHS tape, but smaller. Now, when I got the Kickstarter edition of Ogre, it came in a box that weighed 27 pounds. It's monstrous. It doesn't fit under a bed. Like, I got this giant box home, and I'm like, well, where am I going to put this? I'm like, oh, I'll put it under the bed, up in the guest room, which is just this extra bedroom that sometimes my sister-in-law comes and stays in during Christmas and stuff. And it wouldn't go under the bed. It was so big, this box. But you can still buy it, not the big box. You can't buy the big box anymore. That was more of a Kickstarter thing. But they do make a smaller version of Ogre now. But like, the vehicles are like this big, but they're like cardboard. So it's kind of like you slot together the pieces, and then you have like a Mark V or a Mark IV or a Mark III Ogre and stuff like that. But yeah, that game is still out there. Steve Jackson Games still be making it. I had Ogre. It was one vehicle for one side and combined arms for the other. Yeah, that was the kind of like one of the earlier like asymmetrical type miniature games, because yeah, that was the whole idea of Ogre, was you had an army fighting against a single tank. Now, the thing is that single tank was the size of a city block. Like, in the lore for that game, I always thought it was cool. Like, the tank would roll out of the factory and then just drive to the ocean, and then just go in the ocean and drive along the bottom of the ocean, and then come up on a beach someplace else in another country they were attacking, and then just start fighting. And it was completely like AI run. It was like a sentient kind of like AI tank. There was nobody inside. And it was a whole thing. But yeah, it was a cool game. Rubbing the paints that we cannot get yet. They're coming though. I'm working on resin printed test swatches right now, so I can do some tests with the first wave of Vallejo Express color paints, which I finally got the other day. Nice. Apocrypha Now might be a familiar name, Uncle Adam. Still waiting for that credit on your October 2021 video where you use my photos without my permission or name dropping. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Apocrypha Now. I thought, was it when we were talking about Turnip 28? I thought I posted everybody in there. But nonetheless, I apologize if that's the case. I'm sure it was. I remember grabbing pictures, if that was the Turnip 28 video that I did. I remember grabbing pictures and then not having time to put stuff in there, but then I did post some stuff, I thought, on Instagram later on. But yeah, I didn't know about your tank game. I thought, like I said, I saw Tonks, and I saw that was from Bill making stuff, and I thought that maybe Bill had made it. So if you folks are interested in tank games, you should also check out Tonks as well, both probably through Bill's channel and also through if you follow Apocrypha Now. Like, where would you find that Apocrypha Now? Where would you find the game? Is it available through Wargame Vault or through your own website, or do you check on Instagram, or how does that work out? I finally put all of my paints into dropper bottles recently. After that, I don't think I'll buy a paint not in a dropper bottle. Dropper bottles are great. I think so too. Let's see here. I'm 48 physically, but I am 12-year-old inside. Yeah, I think that's most of us. My Sherman should be arriving today. I'm excited to start kit bashing it. Absolutely. Why did you make a tank game when you don't like spaceship games? It kind of feels the same. I guess I don't know how it feels the same. I mean, it's a single tank. A lot of spaceship games have a tendency to be multiple spaceships. But I don't know. All right, everybody. It is 11 a.m. And so it is time for me to go. Thanks everybody for coming by. I appreciate it. And thanks for coming by and hanging out. If you're interested, again, you can go to snarlingbadger.com, find out more about Snarl, and that'd be cool. And yeah, otherwise, I'll be on Vince's show on Wednesday. And so I hopefully will see you there. I think it generally starts around, I think 8 or 9 p.m. He'll know. You can follow him over there. But there you go. So thanks everybody for coming by and hanging out, and have yourselves a good rest of your weekend, unless it's already Monday where you are, which it may be. And we'll see you again soon. And thanks for watching.